is good.
Only one way.
We'll have to this morning.
Be still and know that I am God is a Bible verse that Aeri taught us in Sunday school. And then it carried over into our experience. Well, everything we do. Lay down. Be still and know that I am God. And repeat that with me. And each time we say it, we will drop a word at the end. For example, be still and know that I am God. We'll say it one time. Then be still and know that I am God. So that by then our deep breaths would have taken place and we'll be ready for our next portion of the afternoon. So join me. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. Welcome to our afternoon session. This is a continuation of what our church is about as part of the United Methodist mission. And what is our United Methodist mission? To make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Well, the world is our parish, not just Oakland Chinatown. And we've been blessed ever since 2001, if not before, of the mission that we share with Aeri, and Aeri shares with us. As she reminded us this morning, we commissioned her and sent her off as a missionary with her work. But she actually went much earlier, for her parents told her, "You're going to go," and together with her parents, she worked and began a ministry with RCD, Reformed College of Theology.
Reformed Theological College.
Oh, Reformed Theological College, RTC. And from that grew her experience of what we know of today. So, as part of our mission at CCUMC, we have what's called an MMT. MMT is our Mission Ministries team. And from that, we have another piece that's called the yes, of course, thank you. I can read lips if I can hear it. YCVM Task Force. And from that, and the task force, four of us, Pastor Emily, Aeri, Benjamin, and I. And since we're going alphabetically, they named the chairperson of that task force. We'll start at the back end of the alphabet. So, we're very happy to have you here this afternoon. Please continue to get up and avail yourself of that wonderful lunch. You notice we added vegetables to our lunch. Because we never had vegetables before.
Can I say something out of
salad that Becky provided for us.
This is an out of turn. That's the best salad I've ever had.
Well, Becky made a salad today. Thanks, Becky. And so, with our YCVM and then our task force, we're glad to come before you and share a little bit more about what Aeri started on this morning. It's a work in progress. Save your messenger as a handy reference, because on that abbreviated left page, you see lots of information on there that you can share. And you see people in your coming and going. You see them on the street. Did you know I have a mission in my church? There it is. All that good. So, Aeri, you and Benjamin and Pastor and I have any questions. If we don't know the answers to the questions, we'll go to the MMT. And if not that, we'll go to the EMC. And if not that, we'll go to the BOAT. And nothing else, we'll go to God. Thank you, Aeri.
Thanks, Uncle Bert. Since I was there, basically the task force gave me a task to do when I was there, and they gave me a set of questions talking points and comments and et cetera, for me to meet with the leadership of our partners and to have conversations about. So I had a homework assignment to do, and I'm reporting back on my homework, essentially. So one obvious big topic is, of course, we're wondering how KCVS is doing. How are you guys doing? What has been good? What has been challenges? And here are some basic facts that I was tasked with getting back. So enrollment, teaching staff, school calendar, fee structure. What about taking care of orphan students? Financial aid, those kinds of questions, and more. So to begin with, this is as of Thursday. When I was there, they were beginning their third term, so this is third term. They have 3 classes of nursery: baby, middle, and top class. And that's big numbers, 76 altogether. And then in the primary grades, P1 through P7, that's a British, inherited from the colonial times, of course, system. Primary 1 through primary 7. And they have 135, so total they have 211 at the time that I was there. And out of them, 44 girls are boarding in the new dormitory that was built that you saw in the video. It's 3 rooms. One of them is being used as a storage right now because they don't have full capacity boarding yet. 22 boys are boarding in one of the converted classrooms. And then 155 are what they call day scholars, which are students who are not staying in the class. This is staff list, teaching staff. John, George, Lambert is our, he's our headmaster. Esther, Stella, George, Janet, Caroline, and Daisy. Daisy is nursery school teacher. Janet is also doubling as a dorm mom. She stays, sleeps with the kids 24/7. And teacher, which one is it? Teacher Esther actually is kind of their dean. So you notice her like chopping wood and taking care of them and telling them to hurry up and things like that. So there are 12 teachers, 9 full-time, 3 part-time, and they also have student teachers that are teachers in training that are coming in, helping. These are the teachers. The gentleman with the big smile in the kind of on the far you're right. Gentleman closest to Auntie Jane is teacher Lambert, who is our headmaster. This is the total staff. They have, other than the teachers, they have 4 full-time staff. 2 are cooks. They make food for the children. And 1 is, of course, Silver is the director of the school. He makes sure the running of the school gets, all the administrative stuff gets done. They get enough food and they get enough materials purchased, blah, blah, blah. And they also have a driver, remember, 5 runs in the morning, 5 runs in the afternoon, and plus runs to get school supplies and foods and all that. And then they have odds and ends, people constructing, fixing stuff who are contract-based workers. The government school term was handwritten on a sheet of paper, so I took a picture. They have dates first, and then month later, second in African system. So I thought you'd be confused. So basically, first term is Feb to April, second term mid-May, mid-August, and then third term, when I was there in September, was September to early December. So those are 3 terms. So they begin. They basically the calendar year is basically the school year in Uganda. All right. So they're about to. In February, they're going to open for their 3rd year of academic operation. Okay, this is the timetable for lower primary. I'm just showing you, even though you can't really tell what's what, that they have reading times, which they call oral literature, okay? But basically they're using our library, little library that we brought. We are one of the few schools in the primary schools that has a library that kids can actually use. Right? So they have reading time for lower schoolers, and then they have library time for upper schoolers. So it's kind of cool that you saw how they learn to read and write purely by copying. They actually get to hold real books and read real stories and all that. So it's kind of cool. So this is, you see how they have break, lunch, games. They make sure they have games with those made up, fold up plastic bags. Okay, student government, they have students run and they actually campaign and they go vote and all of that. So this is it. I introduced you a little bit to Aeri Stacy. You saw a little girl. Even though she's the head girl, she's only in 4th grade. And there are 7th graders. So she won over against all these upperclassmen.
Any term limits?
Term limits?
Let's say 3, 4.
Okay. Yeah, actually 7th graders aren't allowed to run for government, but they have to study. So yeah, only up to 6th grade. Okay, so now the conversation I had was primarily with the board of directors, and I wanted to introduce you. They actually sent a little greeting, each of them, on video, but I tell them just for like 10 seconds, and they go for like 10 minutes each. So I couldn't show them to you because they'd be here until tonight, dinner time. So this is Churchill, chair of the board of directors. He has extensive experience working with NGOs. He's headed Red Track Uganda, which is working with street children actually in Uganda, in eastern region. Worked with Vision Teruso, which is development organization in the Teso region. That's the whole eastern Ugandan region. This year, he's kind of really busy because he's running for parliament office. He's running to be a government minister, like a cabinet minister type, you know. Oh, no, sorry. It's like American version of either senator or a congressman or something, yeah. So parliament, he's running for parliament, so he's campaigning because elections are February, next month. So this year, incidentally, there's a lot of prayer requested because our current president is in term for running for his 7th term or something like that. And there's been some controversy because, etc. Okay. Silver McKenney is the young man that well, he's not that young, but founder, division leader, and now the director of KCVS. And he's actually was my former, is it too dark? Is it okay if we get the lights out? Can you still eat in the dark? Yeah. Silver McKenney is, as I said, vision bearer. He's the one who came to me with, he's one of those people who like prays for 7 days straight and fast with no food, no drink and stuff. So kind of almost like a prophetic figure in his community, so to speak. And he's very simple, and you wouldn't think that he's, but he was my music student, and that's how I got to know him. So that is Silver. Catherine Touquet, director of Hope Teacher Training College for Early Childhood Education. So her school students come to do their internships at the KCVS. So in the nursery team, they have like 7 student teachers working with the children, so it's great. And she gives them a lot of hands-on advice for running a school, and because she has a lot of administrative experience. Okiro Robert is the inspector of schools and community So that means he works for the government to make sure the schools have what they need and all of that, and he inspects them for registration and then eventually accreditation. So he's an important person to have because he knows exactly what it requires for the school to be legit. Jessica Millie Gune is the financial officer of regional educational institutions. I didn't write down exactly which one it was, so I'm sorry. But she's a finance expert. She knows how to do institutional finance, which is very important. So she's joined us. Robert Okiro, the school inspector, and Jessica are new members, as is Martin Ogurucho, civil engineer. He's responsible for building roads and doing government contract work with construction. So since the school still has a lot of capital construction projects, they felt that it would be good to have somebody advise them on all of the legalities and the technicalities.
Who does he work for?
For the government? I don't know. Okay. Moses Ewayu, development expert, especially children's aid NGOs. He's worked with Churchill before. Churchill is the one who's called all of them because he has a wide list of contacts who have expertise in various areas. So his leadership has been really helpful in kind of expediting the opening of the school. Moses Ewayu works with children's NGOs, and so he's willing and able to help. So those are our, briefly I met them like for literally like an hour and a half, and we spent an hour introducing each other. So there wasn't that much, so it was only, okay. And then there's some, okay, good. Opium Bob is kind of like a member, board member at large. He's the legal consultant. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Sorry, it got a little bit all skewed. Sorry. So Bob is the legal consultant. He lives in Kampala, so he's not able to come regularly to the meetings. Silver McKinney is, you know who? Rachel McKinney is that shy-looking young lady who's Silver's new wife, so she's over there, okay? And she also volunteers because her background is in finance also. She used to work for in Soroti, a finance department. So she's been helping kind of with bookkeeping, day-to-day bookkeeping and stuff like that had to be straightened out this year a little bit. Kamo happened to be there because Kamo is one of our YCBM alumni. She's, yeah, we'll talk. So back to KCVS, capital project. Okay. So we asked, these are the questions that I got sent with, so I'm just presenting them. What is the plan for the boys' dormitory? Well, obviously they hope to build it sometime in the future. What's the size of the girls? There are 3 rooms. Each can accommodate up to 15 triple-decker beds. That means 45 girls per room. And total 135 girls can be in the dorms, live in the dorms. If we get triple-decker beds, okay? They don't have any furniture yet. They didn't have that in the funds, okay? And then right now there are no beds, so girls are sleeping on mats. Some 2-row mattress because some kids can't afford their mattress. Most of the dormitories, boarding schools, which most schools are in Uganda, that's the minimum requirement. Even the government schools, if you're going to board, the parents have to provide sleeping mats, towels, and personal effects like a trunk, a chest where they can keep their stuff, and a bucket for washing, etc. Okay, and soaps and what. Okay. Right now, how many students are in the dorm? 44 girls, 22 boys. What is the goal? Eventually, as you said, to capacity. When the boys' dorms are built, then it will be 135, 270 capacity. So that's good. It's good. We also asked them, what about perimeter wall fencing? Because they had told us when the team was there that that's kind of a requirement for the children's security. What's the update or plan on this? Okay, so that's the question, and All of these actually are related to my next slide. Okay, so these are all the things that they hope will be able to get done sometime in the future, not right away, obviously. And some of them, Silver and I sat down and was able to kind of do a very approximation of potential costs. Obviously, they're very in flux because of the varying economic situation there and exchange rates and what. Okay. Partially furnishing the dorms, meaning at least getting beds for the kids who are there now. That's what they're talking about. Okay. Boys' dormitory building is, we are assuming it's going to be about the same as the girls. For the girls, that's how much we sent, and it was built. Perimeter fencing, we'll talk about that a little bit later, down the road, okay? Finishing the classroom building, they have most of it done. The one wing is not completely like, beautifully plastered and floors done and painted, all of that, and all of that. The 1.5, the office structure, and this side is completely done. They just need that one side done, and that's the cost. Finishing the kitchen building, which is also, doesn't have doors and stuff. That's why they're storing the food in one of the girls' dormitories, because they can lock it. It's enclosed. A kitchen building is right now open because they don't have doors and it's not finished. Yeah? And mice and stuff can get in. Okay. Water tank and gutters for the whole, basically, water gathering system. This is important because it's a very drought and storm-prone area, and so they drop in the bucket, made that pump for them, so it's well used, not just by the school, but they open it to the community, so the community members can use it too. But when there's a prolonged drought, it dries out. So they wanted a water tank system so that they can open that up once the well dries out. Okay. So that's in the hopes. Land expansions and entitlement. So the full dream is to get 6 acres surrounding the school lot right now, because there's boys' dorms, sports grounds, and eventually secondary school and blah, blah, blah. And right now, according to the board members who were there, I had a brief conversation, Kumi, the town that they're in, is becoming a municipality, it's becoming a city, which is good for development, but it also means the land prices are going to skyrocket any minute. So they're saying timing is a little bit of essence in this land purchase issue, especially because right now the Silver knows personally the owners of the land surrounding, and he's been talking, and they want to sell it to Silver now. And so I think maybe the details of the finances, the rest of the team can speak to later on. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And hence the perimeter fencing has to wait, because we can't make money, use money to put a fencing and then later expansion and then rebuild the fence. So that's why we're holding off on that. And the price will depend on how much land we're able to finally acquire. Okay? They want to eventually have a separate 3-classroom nursery building. There's 3 classes of nursery who are dividing up other existing classrooms in little makeshift those wood board walls, so you can actually hear everything that goes on. I don't know how the kids learn, but they do. But I'd be very distracted if I were me, but that's just me. Anyway, so they hope, that is a hope somewhere in the future.
What is that again? They want
A nursery school building, separate, dedicated school building for nursery kids only, with little playgrounds for, with swings and stuff for these kids. They're right now just eating outside. When it rains, they are huddled under the eaves eating. So they want to eventually be able to have a dining hall. And then, of course, all the furniture needs as the buildings and facilities are getting built, and the student body increases, they're going to need more desks, chalkboards. Right now, teachers have no desks. They have no desks. Teachers don't have any working desks. The only desk that a teacher has is the head teacher in the headmaster's office. That's the one desk. So, and then right now, I think those of you who are in the team saw 3 latrine stalls for boys and 3 latrine stalls for 4 rooms. One of them is dedicated a shower room. They don't actually have running water, so it's not technically a shower room. They take just an empty block where they can go in and bathe themselves. Yeah. And they have one sharing among how many children? Two. One for boys and one for girls. And that's 211. Wow. You do the math, right? Well, day scholars don't have to wash, but the boarders, right? That's, yeah, 44 and 22 are using 2. Okay? So they want to eventually build 5 washrooms for girls and 5 for boys. Then for registration, according to Robert, registration, which is accreditation purposes, all of the above needs to be done eventually. Okay? That's the purpose. Okay.
So you can't get registration. I'm trying to support you. To reiterate, you need that to register, the accreditation.
Right. Okay. Okay, so the last slide is kind of like, I think it was Donna or somebody in the group asked, MMT asked, can you just kind of price things for us so we have some clue so that the donors know like how much stuff they get, the donors who are donating know like what the prices of things are. So I sat down with Silver again and kind of came up with random items for different amounts. $25, that's 1 semester, 1 term, so that's 1/3, right, of a year. Tuition for 1 child. All the personal effects, soap, sugar, smearing oil, notebooks, pens, and pencils, okay, could be a mattress for a child. Those are all separated. Each of them would cost $25. That's what we're saying. So would be also $25. 2 plastic chairs cost $25. It's a little less than a staff table. So a staff table takes about $30. That's what they're saying. $50. 1 set of classroom desk and a chair. That would be the teacher's desk and a chair, right? That made out of wood. Or tuition for 2 children for 1 semester, obviously. Or 2 mattresses. Okay. $100 gets you 1 triple-decker bed. Oh. Yes. Or 10 bags of cement. That can plaster one wall of a classroom. Okay. And then $100 actually can provide everything: dorms, dorm fees, personal effects, and tuition for 1 term. So that includes 250 cement to finish 1 classroom, or 1 triple-decker bed and 3 mattresses. Okay. $300 provides everything for 1 child for a full year. $500 can buy cement, sand. Okay, so that doesn't include like taking care of them during school breaks, because that costs a lot more, because they'll be only cooking for a small number of kids, and they have to hire the teacher to be there over the break, because they can't have minors staying by themselves. So it would be a lot more for like people like Nyadoy. There are a lot of total destitute orphans who have like not even a distant relative in the village to go to, have stayed, but that costs a lot more. Then $500 can buy cement, sand, and labor to finish a classroom minus paint. Okay. Or $500 can buy 5 triple-decker beds. Okay. $1,000, a whole classroom can be finished complete, including labor and painting. $15 provides all teachers and staff with desks and chairs. $11, completely finish an entire office block, the main building. So those are some, just to give you a ballpark idea of what things cost.
What's office block?
Oh, that's the school is in the shape that you're in right now. And the front is the office block. This is one wing of classroom, and this is another wing of classroom. Yeah? Okay, so we're gonna, don't worry, if you have questions, please remember them, because and comments and stuff, because we'll save that at the end. So the other thing I did was got to see some of our YCBM alum, the children we have supported over the years. Before KCVS opened for instruction, we supported 11 orphan children through their secondary school education. This is Chong Susan, and she's an YCBM alumna. She's married with 2 children. She married actually one of Silver's friends, who's responsible for he's the architect of the school. And she now, she went to nursing school. She runs her own little pharmacy stand in the village. And she's like the little doctor there because obviously people don't have, a lot of doctors. Like Susan. And this is Akama Sarah. She is our university graduate. She has a bachelor's degree in business administration. She opened her own clothing and boutique, Sarah's Boutique, in Kumi Town. I visited her. She's obviously a very fashionable lady, and she can advise village ladies on how to dress. And she described to me the long story of like how she started with nothing, like she had no capital to begin with. So she basically like borrowed a bunch of inventory from some lady, some very generous lady, and she went and sold, and then with money she paid her back and got some more, so that's how she got started, with no capital.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, very industrious and entrepreneurial young lady.
Did you have a sewing machine or by hand? Keep your questions.
No, she gets inventory from Kampala and then she brings it back. Yeah. Hear me? I'm pretending I'm computer.
That's very cute.
Look, it's moving.
Okay. This is a current student. Well, she's kind of an alum. I don't know what to call her. She graduated from secondary, and when the team was there teaching, she was part-time teaching. She was one of the little teachers, they call them, okay? Handling one of the grades on the first year that the KCVS opened, but she right now is enrolled in a diploma. Diploma is like an associate degree, so to speak, okay? Yeah. In business at Uganda College of Commerce. See that? She also had a long speech, but it was also very long. So. This is Raymond Okello. Raymond also was one of our star students. He graduated also from S all the way to advanced level. So those of you who are Harry Potter fans, that would be A level. She did A level. Pursuing his bachelor's degree in business administration at Uganda Christian University. Yes, those 2 students, Jessica and Raymond, are being privately sponsored by generous donors in our community. They're not. CCMC have committed to sponsor those children that we started out with up to secondary, and then beyond that, they have to apply, and then we have to kind of help them find private sponsors for them. Otherwise, once the school KCVS opened, our commitment now is fully to support the operation of the school. So meaning individual child sponsorships are kind of being phased out. This is also one of our currently sponsored students, Grace Amount. She's in senior 6 at Mora High School. She's the young girl who sang "I'll Fly Up Like the Eagle," and she sang it beautifully, and she said, "Thank you for helping me." Yeah. Bright girl, very bright. She's doing well. Orange trees are finally bearing fruit after 6 years, or 5 years, or whatever it was. And they're actually sweet. They look green, but they're actually sweet because they what do you call that, crossbred or splice, or what is it? Yeah, whatever. I'm not an arborist, so I don't know what it's called. So that it'll be hardy. But they also use Valencia oranges so that it'll be sweet. So it's green, but it's sweet like Valencia. So it's finally fruiting, and The only thing is it's in the village and Silver's out in Kumi taking care of the kids. So he says, kids come and pick off the fruit all the time. But he's there now, right now in the village farming his land so that he can bring the crops that he makes to the school. That's how he feeds them because of the orphan, mainly because of the orphan children who can't pay their way and who have to stay. He's basically bringing all of his land crops that he farms during school breaks to help feed the school right now. So he's busy farming and he says, only problem is Rachel is feeling a lot of pain, even though she's not due until March. So he's had to like bring her back to Kumi and he said, I'm getting, torn between my farm work and then my wife is sick and all that. So please pray for them. So, okay, I think that's probably, I'm gonna stop there now because I want to have our other members who want to backfill or fill in any information and then also to have input, questions, comments, etc. First of all, Ben and Pastor Emily, do you want to speak?
I think I'd like to speak the financial piece so that folks know. So the first thing to know is if you don't know this yet, following the process, because we all have tendencies to forget details, since I would say I've been here 5 years ago, this is where my memory runs through. Since about 5 years ago, when I arrived, one of the things that we began to do differently than we had been doing is we set up an annual memorandum of understanding letter with the team we were working with. And in that letter, we detailed the funds that we would be sending over, the amounts, and if we had any stipulations of how they should be used, right? So, for example, in past years we've said this amount is, we're going to send it, and it must be used only for the education of the orphans response room. And this amount we're sending, and it must be used for the building of the school building. Okay? So this was to address some of the concerns in the past that I think preceded me, like, oh, we sent money for orange trees, but it was used for this, or we got this, and then it was used for that, right? So there was some confusion about why would they do that, right? So we have attempted to really clear up communication, be as clear as we can on our end, and try to work with them and helping them to understand us, but also give us feedback if that doesn't work, right? And help them to know that should they need money for something else and they want to dip into this pot for that, that we would like to just be in communication with them about that. But we want to demonstrate that we trust them, of course, right, to make those good decisions. So for your information, in the coming year, we hold a benefit dinner every year with the goal of reaching $20,000. That money we call as part of our sustaining fund. And what that means is we try to send over the full $20,000 every year in order to sustain KCVS. Because that approximately is what they told us is needed to pay for at least the teacher salaries. So the school fees, you might be thinking, well, what are the school fees used for, right? So the school fees come in and cover many of the other kind of administrative costs that go on. But you should also know, as Aeri shared earlier on, Silver is not an administrator by trade, nor necessarily, do you remember the TED Talk this morning? It was like, you can make it, sell it, or do the money part. He's not a money person, okay? He's not a finance person, right? So what he does is he meets a child that needs to go to school, and he will find a way for that child to go to school, even if it doesn't look like on paper there's money for that, okay? So we know that of the 211, Aeri, the number, you have a number, but there's like at least a third of them who are considered in sort of like scholarship children, okay? They're coming fully funded because they simply do not have the funds in their families to cover the costs, right? Now, whether that's the balance needed to be able to be self-sustaining, hard to say at this point, right? But our guess is not. So we are setting $20,000 this year. Any money that we've raised in the benefit dinner, Ben can talk to this about this, is that goes beyond the 20,000. Sometimes we set aside for in the sustaining fund so that should there ever be a rainy year, we have some cushion, right? Because we don't want to come up and be like, oh, we have nothing for you this year, right? So that's one. The second thing is we're sending 18,000 proposed to actually pay for what we understand to be about half the cost of that 6 acres of land that they've said that they are wanting to be able to access now, because once the prices go up, they may never be, we and them would never be able to afford that, okay? So 18,000 is going now, and then we are sending somewhere in the ballpark of 3,000 for the sponsorship of the remaining 3 orphans. So the 3 remaining students are the ones that you started supporting way back when, and now are kind of coming to the end of their education too, but we continue. And by the end of this year, if I'm remembering correctly from Ben, we sort of clear out the funds that we've been sort of holding on and keeping, sort of shepherding of for orphan sponsorship. Just to let you know, more or less that pot gets used up. Because we've turned our focus from that to KCVS, as Aeri has mentioned. Okay? One of the things that I think I would want Aeri to speak to more that she talked with us in the task force is, one of the things that we will have zero understanding of, perhaps with the exception of David and Fung, perhaps from your experience in the Peace Corps, is inflation and the economic situation in Uganda is a rapidly changing one that goes up and down, and the exchange rate changes quite frequently. So the costs also change differently. So one of the things that we feel good about is KCVS now has opened what they call a dollar account, meaning we can now send money over in US dollars and they retain them in US dollars. Rather than us sending them in US dollars and immediately it's already transferred into Ugandan shillings. Okay? And the good thing about that is they don't need to exchange it immediately. So should the rise and fall happen, they can sort of time it or be sure that they're still holding on to sort of a more constant value, the US dollar. Okay? So that's something we should feel good about and kind of affirm. So I think in terms of the current financial situation, one of the things that we want to know is the great good courage and vision of Silver tells us that the school is ever expanding, right? It's never just like, this is what we did last year, we're just going to keep doing this until wherever, right? It's always like, and now let's build the next thing, and now let's get more students, and now, which should be an encouragement to us, but it's also scary, right? Because it's kind of like, oh my goodness, we committed to 20,000. So one of the things that I think I want to affirm and say out loud, and again, we're going to say this over and over in the future years. KCVS, no one should ever think that KCVS is going to close because we don't have any money. Okay? I'm going to say that again. You should never think that, oh my gosh, if we send $0, KCVS is going to close. It will not. KCVS will not close because of us. Okay? Even if we spend $0, KCVS will not close. Why? Because they will find a way with whatever resources in whatever configuration to continue. It may not look like it does now. It may need to cut some classrooms, but it will. The other big thing is they will not be able to sponsor as many vulnerable children as they currently do. Right? They will have to depend more on their fee-paying students. So right now what we need to think about is part of our partnership with them is ensuring that together we're meeting that mission that was first put up, which is that they would serve the most vulnerable within the community, right? Should that ever balance need to change, it just will change, but it will not close. So I know that that's been a concern in the past, like, oh my goodness, we're stuck with this, this sort of mentality. We're stuck with this mission partnership, and if we pull our money, it's like we've spent money, now it's going to go down a tube, and it's going to be like a skeleton school sitting in there, right? please know that that's not the case, all right? So any other finance pieces, Ben is really a helpful person.
That's it.
To remember them. Anything else that you would add, Ben?
Well, I guess we need to find the second payment
Yes.
for the land. That now that we're on the hook for it, I don't think we can delay that indefinitely.
Right, right. So there is a little urgency. And we will be tackling that as a church with different things coming on. Yeah. I do also want to affirm that in the past we've also said, wow, it's so hard to be in communication with Silver and KCVS or YCBM. Please also know that Ben is in weekly, at least, contact with Silver because now they G-chat together, okay? So, it's much easier now through technology and through availability, and maybe Silver's spending more time in Kumi because of the school also, I'm not sure, to be in communication, and should we have questions, they get answered a little bit more.
So, just to contextualize the communication issue a little bit, I'm in Uganda at least once a year, and they have come a long ways in terms of technology, but internet is still a very highly privileged thing to have access to because you have to have the device, which is all imported in a landlocked country that charges the price of the item. Basically, you have to pay twice for the same laptop there than you do here, okay? And the little modem stick because they don't have wireless everywhere like we do, okay? And they don't have Comcast, okay? Which costs an arm and a leg. An average working Ugandan could not afford that. Plus, charge to get however many megabytes or gigabytes of usage per period, right? So, meaning it's not possible for an average Ugandan to afford communication ability, okay, and to have access. So, if we are expecting that and we're complaining because they're not answering our emails, we have to also know that is the situation. And then in Kampala, it's at least available, though expensive. In Kumi, electricity is out probably on average half the time, okay, for weeks at a time sometimes. And then in the village, there is no electricity. So there's all kinds of contextual things that we have to keep in mind.
Vincent had a thought?
Well, no, I have a question on the timing of the urgency for the second payment for the land. Is it this year, this quarter, this month? Also, what's the total payment needed for the 6 acres?
It sounded like the total was 36,000, right? Is that right?
Can I also add, remember in the listing of that land purchase, there's a land purchase price that you pay the owners, and then there's the legal, to legalize and to get documents and to have surveyors come and blah, blah, blah. That's another actual significant cost that we don't know yet. So remember that is also a big part because for them to legally own the land, they have to go through that process with the government. So, yeah.
One second, so let me finish this, Jonathan, we'll go to you. So our understanding is that they raised this issue with Aeri in September. We discussed it as a task force in December. There was communication with Silver immediately following that with that exact question because we thought, okay, we have some undesignated monies that we could probably do half of, but we could not get to the 36,000 now. So Ben did ask that question, and I believe that it was within this calendar year, 2016, if we can finish that would be the goal. And I think the reasoning is because that the owners might feel some pressure to not hold it, right? Not hold the sale for much longer after that because they can get a different, possibly better price.
Okay, so the price is good until the end of this year for 36,000. First payment is the mid-18, the second payment is needed to be collected. The documentation fees probably are what, 10% of the cost?
I have no idea.
Or is it 100% of the cost?
Oh, no, not 100%.
Well, I don't know how the government works.
I don't think it's 100%, but I couldn't
Probably more like 10, 15% then.
We will report on that as soon as we
Yeah,
know.
we have to ask them, I think, we have to ask.
But does
So,
that complete your thought? Okay, so John, can we go to Jonathan?
Yeah, I was really curious, $100 does one student for a term.
Uh-huh.
So how do you break it down into 25? 25 tuition,
Oh, no.
So you want to go back to that page? Jonathan, that's a good question because all of us in the task force asked that thing of Aeri too. We're like, wait, how do these numbers add up? And so you'll see sometimes they don't add up, right? Like, why does 250 for a triple decker it's bed, not bus?
tuition, dorm, and personal effects for one child for one term.
Yeah.
Where is that? Sorry, I don't know.
$100 per tuition, dorm, and personal effects
For
For
one
one
term.
for one dorm.
Yeah.
So I didn't know dorm cost anything. And his tuition is 25, so how
Well,
do you get
no,
100?
dormitory, meaning to room and board costs something, right? You have to pay for room and board, right? That's the cost.
So-
Personal effects means like soap and blankets and mattresses.
So could you go over it for us? I thought it'd be
I,
interesting. No?
yeah, so the tuition that the school charges about $25, right, for one term. For the child to actually be able to be a boarder, you have to pay, I guess, $75 more. Or it costs $75 more for room and board plus all the other equipment or stuff you need.
So again, you
That
have to
doesn't include
remember that
lunch.
these are working in Ugandan shillings at the time Aeri talked to them, right? So the US dollars are really
It's not a
ballpark,
good,
as she
yeah.
said.
Because, can I just tell you, last year alone, the exchange rate fluctuated something like 40%. So our monies work very differently depending on what time of the year or what the economic situation is.
Can we go to Donna first, David?
So just to tag along to Vince's question, so the land gets bought, but there's no money to do the registration, the legal stuff. Will that ever interfere with the owning the land? Like, oh, well, you've owned the land for a year, but you haven't done all the paperwork. You lose it. Is that a weird question?
I think she said the paperwork has to come first to establish what the land is.
I don't think we know, Bert, to be honest.
No.
So I don't think we know the details, to be very honest.
So eventually, as an organization, they do have to go through that. But as things are in Uganda, you know how, like, I think somebody, very legal-minded person, very logically and makes sense to us, said, you know, they're going to start an organization. They're going to buy, spend big money to buy a car. Why don't they hire a lawyer? When we suggested that, they were really offended, I think, because we are a very litigious kind of culture, so lawyers are just part and parcel. We don't take offense at that. For them, it's a sign of mistrust and distrust. So they thought, oh, you don't trust us to be able to handle it, that kind of thing. I think a lot of the times purchases of land are like handshake, not legal documents. But the paper happens sometimes much later, like a generation later can happen, or never. So it's very commonplace. I've seen that a lot, to do sales. Now, it's a different case when I talk with missionaries, foreign aid workers. They must have legal papers, otherwise they can get kicked out anytime. But if you're a local and if you're from that region and all of that, I think there's tacit on that. That's at least my gathering from what I've seen and observed.
But I think all these questions are ones that we're going to gather up. Because
Right.
I think even as we ask them, I think it's helpful for us and helpful for them. And we will, so we're sort of sharing kind of what we know at this point as we go along. And so we'll ask the question.
Yeah, definitely we can ask.
You think of it as title insurance.
Yeah.
If you don't have title insurance, you can own the land, but then it could be taken away from you.
Good point.
I think in my sense of having worked with them to this point if they named it, like they named that we needed title, blah, 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 it's on their radar. Because otherwise, I think they would not have told us that. And we would have made an assumption that they would have gotten it.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
David?
Yeah, I'm just curious, the students, you have individuals that sponsor individual students?
They have about, right now, 22 students or 20 students that are sponsored by this organization called MADI, as I mentioned, Making a Difference International. And they have sponsored students at different institutions around the area. And my understanding is they are the organization that matches up individual sponsors with individual students. And MADI sent these students to KCVS when they opened because of her good reputation, better than sending to government schools, all of that. So that's the only ones. We don't actually do that work of, liaisoning between individuals who want to sponsor. Right now, that's
See that name again, Madi, in what?
MADI,
Yeah.
Making a Difference International, MADI.
And if you Google it, you find out that it was started by a Ugandan who now lives in the United States and kind of has this as an organization with staff there and staff here. And I think it's true that in 2014, when our second Volunteers in Mission trip went, there was also a Madi team there, or had been there, is that right? Wasn't there like a Madi?
We didn't actually
trip?
meet.
No.
We didn't meet. They came later, I think.
So that's another source of, in some ways, income at this moment.
Yeah, because they're sending full-paying students there. So it's great because a lot of the students are very needy. They could not have come and afforded the tuition, but MADI is sponsoring some. And the school is able to then take in other students who are also needy. So, when a Westerner always visits, they think, oh, sponsorship. So it's not that they don't have students who are in dire need. Obviously, there's too many that we can possibly, So in the students, in the school, there are, always students who I got to know. They're like, oh my God. So.
Is the health a problem with the kids? Shut me down immediately with a bad question. Is health a problem? Do they have to go to a doctor or something occasionally?
Oh, yeah, I definitely assume so. A lot of the children are HIV positive, and I know, a lot of them do have to. And then some of them actually had to be sent home because they couldn't stay in school anymore.
So in the proposed budget coming up, we should note that one of the hopes of the school is to be able to hire a nurse, a school nurse.
Let me ask Louise, put you on the spot if it's okay, but that's the first time we're hearing some of this, maybe hear and see things that we may have missed. A question or?
Okay, I'm not sure I quite understand. You guys, as a congregation, send the 20,000 and an additional 18, and that's an annual amount that you guys send?
20,000 is an annual, 18 is an add-on this year because of the land purchase.
Just this year.
It's very expensive, though, right?
And I want to say, Louise, we don't do it with just this church, really. It happens through imagine a network expanding off of each person here. And I hope you'll come to the 2016 benefit dinner that's coming up, and you'll see about 200 people gathered together. And it really comes through ticket sales and donations on that night. Literally, that 20,000 comes on that night from friends and family that are faithful and generous through the years.
Oh yeah, our church members are small. You saw our congregation. The people who come to dinner are not primarily our church members.
What about the Catholics? Were they always out of the conversation?
I'm sorry?
The Catholics, maybe they'd be expanded.
I'm gonna jump off that and ask Bert if you can
Well, I
talk
just
to.
also want to recognize Louise as a member of the college admin secretariat, which is in North Oakland, so welcome to you.
So, I also want to note that there was another church that played a significant part in partnership last year and the year before, is a church down in San Diego, Chinese Community Church, and it's not a United Methodist Church, it's, I don't know what church it is, but
What percentage is that $20,000 of the total budget?
Of
What
our, the
percentage?
church's total
No,
budget?
no, the
the
school's.
school's total budget? Can we,
Roughly half, right? We talked about 50% self-sufficient.
Of 2016's proposed, right? Or- Yeah.
Or hand waving, it changes every year, but it seemed like it was about 50%
this year?
last year.
This coming, oh, last year.
And that's 50% of their operating budget, not their capital.
Oh, yeah,
budget.
right.
Operating.
Yeah. Capital is a totally, capital project. is a
Separate
totally
project,
separate.
separate category.
Also, it might be good to explain the relationship between the Vision Ministry and CCUMC. We're closely related, but we're not the same.
So, CCMC, YCBM, and KCVS is not the same.
Oh yeah, so basically what we're saying is YCBM is not a part of CCUMC, they're not even Methodist, they're not even,
They're not even Methodist.
yeah, they're not.
They are religious.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it is a Christian, named Christian organization, and it was completely started with the Ugandans, and we actually didn't do a, what do you call that, a covenant relation partnership until an official, until last year, right? We just happened to be just kind of, I think mainly just by contact. So organizationally, we're not related in any way or shape. But KCVS is a part of YCBM's ministry.
So Bert, what I wanted you to speak to is CCC, this potential,
Is what?
our potential proposed partnership.
Oh, yes, yes. We've invited our friends, brothers and sisters from San Diego to be part of a partnership covenant. We were just talking about this last week at home, so you can follow up and see what's happening. The partnership came about as someone down there heard about what we were doing, or because we told them, or they heard what we said. And that's the way we kind of reach out and branch out to other organizations. Mr. Pennins, maybe?
Who are not even Methodists.
Not even Methodist. Actually, I grew up Presbyterian, so I'm happy Presbyterian.
So we're integrated ecumenical. So we just know that God has a plan, and we want to be part of God's plan to affect all lives and many lives in global village that we live in.
I have a question. Are we trying to find a solution to get the funding for the land as soon as possible? Or is that?
Yeah, so what is the plan? So maybe, we're in a funny position right now about how to answer that, Albert, because there is a plan and it's going through decision-making process. So let's share what the proposal is, Becky, if we can. But just know that it's gone through the mission ministry team, English ministry, and it's now coming to vote in 2 weeks.
So we had a little brainstorming. I think Ben and I actually have been thinking about this for a good year, to have a charity bike ride. And that would be a kickoff for this campaign. So we are in the process of getting it approved by our board and then actually opening it up to all of the California and Nevada churches. And it's something we want you to pray about. It's a push, pray until something happens. Because you can really raise a lot of money through bike rides. Our goal would be to raise 30,000 this year. You know, whether or not we need that or we don't know, but it would be through donations, and we would have a small team of riders that people would pledge online to donate per kilometer. It's a 100-kilometer ride. So even if you pledge 10 cents a kilometer, that's $10. But if every church pledged $1 per kilometer, that's $100. If 300 churches did it, we'd have $30,000. So it has the potential to work, but it's pending approval and getting it moved forward.
Do you have a route for the ride?
Yes, from the.
We are working on that, yeah.
We think we do.
It's open to people who have cycling experience, that have to be over 18, because we want to be sure that they're covered as far as liability, safety. Yeah, we're starting small, but there are bike rides that have hundreds, even thousands of riders, but we're not anywhere in that category. We're going to have a small team of maybe 2 dozen riders.
So right now, Robert, that's the direction we're going in.
So just remember that Ben and Becky are spokes.
Well, just for brainstorming.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I think first of all, we probably need to know the bottom line, at least an estimate how much the whole thing is going to cost.
Right.
Then we could announce it, say, okay, this is our goal,
Right.
right? Otherwise, we could be all talking about, but we don't know how much we need to know. So, and then if for urgency-wise, you have a timeline, like maybe 6 months you have to come up with money. Then for the fundraising might not make it cut. So my brainstorming is like maybe somebody could come up with a loan, maybe a low interest loan or free interest loan to fulfill that. That once we get the fundraising, then we could pay back that loan. Then we could, yeah, $18,000. Well, we say more than $18,000. It's not a small amount, but it's not a huge amount.
And we've done similarly here for ministries. Remember Roy? Remember us did float those interest-free loans. It did pay off.
Yeah.
So who's borrowing?
In time, you'll know yet.
Who is the borrower? Who's the borrower?
CCOMC would borrow it actually from an individual in his proposal, in his brainstorm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Other thoughts that come up, please, you're invited to ask anybody around here. It's a ministry that is a work in progress. It never ends. The world is up there.
So maybe we can say, I mean, when we look around, there are folks in the congregation that we want to share this good information with that for many different reasons may not have been here. Maybe we can request Aeri and Glenn together to turn this into some kind of easy document that we could mail out actually to our CCOMC list so that everybody has access to the same information. That's one. The second thing is I just want to come back to where we began this morning, which was we began this morning in Sunday school together with the idea, with the thought, of if you want to help someone, shut up and listen, right? I'm not someone that allows things shut up in my family, so it's a little uncomfortable for me to say. But the whole idea of this economic development specialist was that when you're really wanting to reach out and work with somebody and make a difference, you have to listen to where that person is asking, what their passion is, right? So what I want to come back to that beginning for a second, because as I was watching it, what struck me is that that's what, in some ways, has been happening, right? Silver came to Aeri. She didn't go there and say, let me start a school, right? Or anything like especially, that all of this, he's brought many people into that passion along with him. So I think what I'd like to affirm is that we have been attempting to be good listeners with our friends at YCVM. We have attempted to become friends with them and not just funders. Okay? And there's still so much to be learned along that journey, because so much anxiety comes up, right? And you know, it's funny because even I've never been there, right? But I grew up abroad. Even as I listen to Albert's suggestion, the funny thing to me is, like, sometimes I get a message from YCVM that things are so urgent, but then that deadline passes, and you know, they're like, okay, it's fine, right? So part of it is also understanding, like, when we take everything that we hear and listen to really as if from our Western American trained ears, right?
Literal factual.
Yeah, right. So sometimes it's also the very challenging learning of, like, working with people that are entirely different in different contexts than ourselves, and learning what it means to be good partners to them. But we want to give thanks for Aeri being over there and being able to gather all this good information for us, because it really does help us feel like we have a little more sure footing in continuing our friendship with YCVM.
Any other thoughts, comments for the good of the order? Hearing none, this concludes our session for this afternoon.
Thank you.
Stay warm, stay well, stay in love with God.
Amen.